So it was 1 year ago this week that a bunch of witches decided to hex Donald Trump with a mass binding spell. He's still in power, he's more powerful than ever, so it was a complete and total failure. Now, beyond the jokes of like worst witches ever and so on, and the thing was farcical, what can we learn from this? From a magical insight, what can we learn from this? First of all, you're not witch and you have no magical power. That's the first thing you should learn. You don't have any magical power and you're not a witch. If you did, you would have been successful. But if you're a real magi or sorcerer, you would have not partaken in that spell to begin with. The first reason why it failed was you don't curse, and that's what it was. It was a curse. Don't call it a binding spell all you want. It was a curse or a hex. You don't curse anyone who hasn't personally harmed you with an intent, meaning that someone who went out of their way and to attack or destroy you on purpose for no reason. Now that doesn't include anyone who was okay to you and then you did something nasty to them and they retaliated, because that's not personal harm without intent. It has to be that Trump would have specifically had come after them. Now don't give me this nonsense about, well, he represents all the things. No, that, you see, this is not how it works. A curse only works if it's personal. Secondly, if you're anyway ethical as a witch, a magician or a sorcerer, you know that curses are competent. You should be aware, if you know, it's all covered in my book, Sorcery, the Invocation of Magic, that curses travel in families. So why should, say, his young son, Baron Trump, and then their grandchildren be cursed as well? You see, there's a real ethical aspect to this. You should only curse when you really, really have to. And it's probably not even a good idea then, even if you're on your deathbed, because the possibility or the probability of rebound and blowback is extremely risky. This brings us to the second point. Those people who cursed Trump may have been filled with self-righteous platitudes and moralizing and believing that they were on the side of righteousness, but they're all going to be punished now for doing what they did. A lot will get cancer, many will have, the majority will get severe depression and mental illness and other forms of psychosis, and there'll be lots of suicides, because that energy comes back to you. And I don't believe in this threefold law of Wicca. It could come back 1,000 times, it could come back one time. It depends on how much hatred you had in your heart for somebody who never did you any personally harm. Comes back to you. So for instance, if there was someone partaking in that mass binding spell who was really, really full of hatred for Trump, I mean visceral hatred, it will come back in an enormous level. If other ones were there doing it because they're the majority, peer pressure, doing it because they want to be part of some kind of moral crusade through magic, they will get things like extreme depression that they'll probably never get rid of, and they will just slowly waste away until they die. Before their time. I'm not saying like 1 year or 2 years. It'll be 20 years of unhappiness. How do you do that? You can't really escape it. This is why you should never curse anyone, even if you justify it. Now, if these were real witches and they read something like the works of Dion Fortune and her Magical Society of Light back in World War II did not curse Adolf Hitler. What they did was they would stand and have meditations or magical workings to make the German bombers lose their way, or drop the bombs in the wrong places, or not be able to find their targets. This would because they even knew that if they had cursed the pilots of the German bombers, that German bomber was a soldier. He wasn't, although being a bomber pilot is a pretty disgusting job by any military standards, it's a cowardly job. But even doing that would have been risky. So what they did was they had magical workings to make the German bombers miss their target. That's what they did. They didn't do it personally against Hitler. They wanted Hitler to make mistakes, but not to try to destroy him or make curse him. these kinds of ideas as military plans to fail. And if the people who were against Trump so much, that's really what they should have aimed for, to have his policies fail. Now, they made it personal because they're so stupid actually at times. I know I covered this in another video. They used the tower card. Why? Because Trump has a tower. It's ridiculous, right? They used the tower card. Now the tower card is about new beginnings, really. It's really about, you know, the destruction of something so something beautiful can come from it. So for instance, the bulldozing of an ugly old building and the building of a lovely new building, a functional building. So basically that's what Trump represented in the minds of many people who voted for him. So they were validating his presidency with the wrong card. That's not the card they should have picked. The card they should have picked should have been something like the world or judgment, and hope that, like, if there was some kind of court case could come against him. But that wouldn't have worked either, because the whole spell was wrong and it was a binding spell. It was done by people who were very foolish. Probably was invented by some dark occultist who was tapping into the power force of it. And so here we are a year later. Trump isn't hammered in any way, and my condolences to you that took part in that silly fiasco. If you got off lightly, let it be a lesson to you never to curse. It doesn't matter if it's Pol Pot or Stalin, or even if someone who was deserving of it. Trump wasn't deserving of it, but someone who really was. Trump was just a politician. Trump's just not even a politician. That's why people like him. That's why people voted for him, because he wasn't one. Even if it was a monster, a real despot, don't even curse them, because they haven't personally attacked you. They have to come after you as an individual, knowing who you are. So there's a lesson there for all of us. If you got off lightly, I hope you did. I hope many of you did. I wouldn't wish any real horrors on any of you, because no one should be destroyed because of stupidity. And that's what 99% of the people, the Dorstaller hat witchy poos who took part in that mass mining spell, well, you know, that's what they were doing. So I think things like chronic depression, self-doubt, and that kind of thing. The first one is to realise you have no magical power. If you did, you wouldn't have taken part in that event. The second thing to realise is that you dabbled in the left-hand path, even though you thought you were on the side of righteousness and goodness. You were actually a left-hand path practitioner, because you cursed someone that didn't do no personal harm. And as you know, the only purpose that you should use magic for, if you read my book Sorcery, the Invocation of Strangeness, or even read Crowley's works, or anybody who was a real magician, is to do personal spiritual development. That's its primary purpose. So lessons learned, folks.